Michael Mott.
Yeah.
All is right in the world. Well, at the time of this recording.
Right.
We'll find out.
God is sovereignly in control, and sometimes he allows evil to exist so that we are drawn closer to him and we depend on him. And we look forward to a day when wrongs are set right.
So you feeling extra close to God? God's really working on your heart. I was thinking there's a couple sports updates I want to give. First one is that, Kansas City Chiefs, going to the Super Bowl. That's a big praise. Been praying about that
big praise.
A lot. Not for Michael. So Michael was just telling me this is going to air the day after the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
so
I think that's right.
That's
so
pretty
next
crazy.
Sunday is Super Bowl, right?
Yeah.
So
That's
we're
right.
recording this on the Sunday before Super Bowl because we record a week ahead.
You know what we should do? We should have recorded a video where you're like really happy. And then record one where you're really sad, and so we could like air a different one
play
based
it
on
immediately,
and know your reaction. Obviously you're pulling for the Eagles.
I mean, it's tough to pull for the Eagles when you're a Pats fan, but it's even tougher to pull for the Chiefs when you're a Pats fan. You know what? I am a Pats fan, clearly. But, man, I would love to see Joe Burrow
Oh, my goodness.
be there.
This is where it starts.
I would love to see Josh Allen. That's Bills. So, I'm supposed to, as a Pats fan,
That's right,
Massachusetts, I'm supposed to be 100% against any New York fan. But, I like Josh Allen. I think he's great. So there are a number of other teams that I think are better and didn't get the
we call it the Tom Brady treatment. Is what we call it.
The numbers don't support that. All the numbers from Tom Brady era did not support that the treatment he got is anything. In fact, towards the end, Tom Brady was getting anti-treatment.
I don't buy it.
It was tougher on that.
I don't buy this at all. I also saw. I haven't looked at this.
You thought this was theology, but this is really sports talk. Sports talk show.
I didn't take time to look at it, but I did see this interesting meme or picture graphic of comparing Mahomes and Brady's career. I'll have to check it out. It was a pro Mahomes thing.
It was pro him.
It was pro Mahomes, and just talking about from a statistical perspective. It's I'll develop this more, but where basically Mahomes is like so much ahead in every single stat. I mean, outside of winning Super Bowls, where Brady obviously was great at that. But it's like, man, obviously Brady's really, really good. But I just, I don't know. I expect more from a statistical, like Peyton Manning. Like I see some of those, I'm like, man, Peyton Manning, great quarterback. Great. But I'll have to deep dive. But we'll see what happens. I'm hoping it's a good game.
My prediction is that if we don't get a single holding call, then the Chiefs will win. Because I'm an offensive lineman.
Yeah. Oh yes, that's where your head's
at. I understand what
at.
it means to hold. I've also coached teams. And I've coached teams where my defensive linemen are getting held and it's not getting called. And that foundationally changes the game. I probably said this before, like in a way that you can't wrap your mind around it unless you've been there. You've got a guy who should be putting pressure on a quarterback, and he's not. And so now my secondary defensive backs, they are struggling because the quarterback has so much more time. And you can't guard a person forever.
Yeah,
right?
You gotta.
And so that makes the pass open up. So then I have to adjust to add secondary, play a zone, and now that opens up the box. And so now the run works better because if you don't call holding when people are being held, it is fundamentally changing the game.
Tell me this: would you be pro this or against this? Would you be pro if we had the AI capabilities to call holding within reason? Like they could program, like, well, it's some stuff you can't, because you can call holding probably on every play, but whatever is like the egregious calls, like to take those out, and it's like a AI flag throws something, which would be like, hey, implement that if it's like past a certain threshold, and then you don't have those like terrible calls.
Yeah, because the problem is the NFL would have to have a desire for that. I mean, I've never been one of the guys that thought that the NFL had a game plan or had a script. I'm like, that's crazy. But then when you see film of a ref looking right at, a Chiefs guy got his arm wrapped around someone, and it's like, at a point they don't want to call it, you know.
Yeah. Speaking about calling, I've got 911 on standby in case you have a heart attack right now, because this is great. This is my favorite part when we bring up the Chiefs. This is good.
So yes. So if you look, and if you look, maybe it's changed because it's been a couple years ago that I like actually researched the rules, like read all the rules on holding, and incidental holding, i.e. holding that does not affect the play, is not called.
Oh, yeah.
So
that's right. Yeah.
If the quarterback is like on the right side, blah, blah, blah,
They're
blah,
not going to
blah,
get.
and a left side person is holding, but like it has no material impact on they don't call that. So some people are like, well, there's holding on every play.
Yeah.
Probably, but it's not by the rules. It's not all supposed to be called, you know. So they know what they're supposed to call and what they're not supposed to call, and there's clearly some egregious miscalls. Yeah. So yes, absolutely. If there were egregious miscalls, throw the flag.
I don't think the NBA is this picture perfect league. They've had some scandals in their past, but they at least will. They release in the last 2 minutes a play-by-play breakdown of what the refs did right and did wrong. And so there's some accountability where they'll be like, hey, we actually missed these 4 plays. And it's the referee association saying this. I would have loved, in some of these NFL games, I would love to have at least the last 2 minutes, like, you tell me where you think you've missed it, so there is some accountability that we recognize. But, you know, so NFL. Hey, Roger Goodell, we know you might be a listener. The last thing I'll say, because I know this is getting long, I was going to say, got my Lakers hat on today.
Yeah.
We got a new Lakers fan in our church, Marshall Compton. I bought this guy a Lakers hat to get shipped to his house tomorrow. Yeah. Because his boy Luca is now a Laker, which is insane. And he's Marshall, I'm talking to you. Now you're a Laker fan, so it's all in love. But he would talk some major smack against the Lakers. He'd be like, Kobe was the all this stuff. He's like, the Mavs, and now he's like, I love the Lakers because Luka's on there. So it's great. So I need you on my side to smack talk and trash talk everyone else.
No, that's good. That's good.
So
I think the best clip of Luka is where he's like flirting with that
ref.
that ref, and it's like I can't really tell. Like she seems like I have to act like I'm, not happy about this, but it seems like she's at least flattered that he's flirting with her. So.
Yeah, I'm hoping maybe Luka lays off of the sweet tea a little bit. Yeah. Maybe LA, everyone's trying to look their best. Maybe he'll get some conditioning there. LeBron can rub off on him because we're going to be really good at offense. Losing AD, he's really good at defense. Luka's not the defender, so I'm not under the illusion that this will, fix everything. But
go Celtics is all I got to say.
All right. Well, we're on this very theological topic today.
Right.
Paying your taxes.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, Patriots won so much, now it's time for me to pay my taxes.
Hey, you got to pay your dues. Yeah. There you go. We'll go ahead and we'll take it to the next level. From the heart of the Low Country in South Carolina,
it's the Take Two podcast, where we take theology to the next level.
Tax season is right around the corner, Michael.
Oh man, I have started putting my documents into the folder.
Yeah,
I need to. Every year I'm like, I'm gonna get started on it sooner, and then I don't. But it occurred to me. I don't know why it never occurred to me before this year. I could, as the year goes on,
just little by little,
by little, put them in there. So I'm already ahead of the game this year because I have some stuff in there. But yeah, I have to go and search through my envelopes, make sure I have I'm like, where's that G1099 from the state of South Carolina that shows
all these forms? There's so many forms, and I understand there's like a system and there's a million forms. So it's like, why can't we have like forms 1 through 10? Like, I know it has to be like the 1095C, and we got to make it like these kind of things. But I'm
it's crazy. What I think should happen is that income tax should be abolished.
Like where your head's at.
Property tax should be abolished. All taxes should move to sales tax and use tax. So if you use something, you pay for it. So gasoline is a perfect example of a use tax.
Yeah.
I don't know how that converts to your car out there because you're tearing up the roads and you're not paying gasoline tax right now, but we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
And then the federal government should be taxing the states. The state should be taxing their citizens. And then the state of South Carolina has a tax debt to the federal government, and they pay it.
Man.
And then it simplifies it,
because it's so convoluted, man.
All the taxes get taken at the point of sale, and guess what? Rich people can't like the super rich.
Yeah. Just
they
game.
can't hide behind these loops anymore because they're going to buy the yacht, they're going to buy the Ferrari, they're going to buy the whatever, and it's going to have a sales tax on it, and they're going to pay those taxes, and they're not, and the sales taxes will go up.
Yeah,
but,
right. To offset,
right.
and maybe hopefully save. Oh, not just offset, but maybe even be a little bit better
right.
for the consumer.
I think your average person in that scenario does better, and it incentivizes income. Mm-hmm. I can go out and earn 30,000 more if I work hard, and I get to keep all of that.
Can I tell you this? There's an employee that is of retirement age who works in our practice, and he is unable. I need him to cover a few days a week. He's like, I only can work one day a week because I can't go above a certain threshold, or I don't get I don't get certain benefits. And so he's being incentivized not to see patients that don't have physical therapy. He's like, I'm almost over that line. Yeah. So he's got to monitor how much he works. Is this crazy?
He can keep benefits. Yeah, it is crazy. It is crazy that we, and that that's as a systems engineer, which is my day job.
Okay, yeah.
You look at the system and you look at what is being incentivized, and what we incentivize is debt and
that's right.
Not we're going out and taking a risk and making some income because it gets taxed so much.
Well, we all hate taxes. Paul is taking this bold stance and saying, hey guys, you might not like it, but pay those taxes. So maybe we can get our bearings. Where are we at in Romans, Michael?
We are in chapter 13. So we're nearing the end. 16 total chapters. 16 is basically a lot of salutations and goodbye. Some great names in there. I know that's what you're about to say. Phoebe and Julia are both in 16. Karis has been everywhere. Grace
everywhere. That's it. Yeah, that's great.
But we're right on the heels of Romans 12, and Romans 12, if you've been with us, you've heard it, is this huge break in the book of Romans from theology now to practice. And so someone would say orthodoxy to orthopraxy. So straight doctrine now to straight living, and how do we apply it? So Romans 12, 1 through 2, therefore I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service of worship. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable and perfect. And so the motivation for all that is the mercies of God. All of the stuff that we talked about, 11 through 1, is if we're working backwards. And what Paul is saying is it's reasonable.
Yeah, right.
God's not raising an unreasonable standard. This is reasonable service for you to do.
Wow, that is a great, such a powerful passage that everyone knows. And then where does he go from there? Well, right into spiritual gifts. That's probably telling. The emphasis, okay, this is a great way to put this into action. Goes through all these different gifts, and then into the next section, these marks of a true Christian: letting your love be without hypocrisy, overcoming evil with good. All these things. You look at the list between 9 through 21, and there's a lot of things we could probably all of us find at least one or two, maybe 6 or 7 things that we could do a little bit better. And so that kind of brings us to where we're at. Pastor Joel made this connection later on in the sermon, but it's like overcome evil with good. Now I'm talking about the government. It's like, even when things maybe aren't totally perfect,
right?
What's our responsibility?
Yeah. And I really appreciate where Joel landed out on this because kind of to steal some of our thunder, he's basically going to land on this idea that bad government is better than no government.
Yeah.
And as bad as sometimes it can be, it's got to be a really, really evil government like the Third Reich or something like that for it to be bad. Because even if you're in a communist country, that communist country is basically bringing some order. Sure, your free speech is, battened down and all, those types of things, but at least you have some security that I can walk to my street and not be murdered.
Yeah, no, I think there's something to it, because I think it's easy to be like, the government just gets in the way of everything. And in my mind, I say this a lot. I'm like, let's scale back government. But it's a good point. When everyone, as Pastor Joel said, does what is right in their own eyes, that is a dangerous place to be.
It is dangerous. I've remarked before the similarities between my wife's interest and her personality and how she, interacts with the world, and Chris Hawk's interest, which is probably why, telling why I'm a good friend. He and I are good friends. But my wife really likes like 48 Hours, Dateline.
Oh, gotcha, yeah.
And then we were driving to listen to duck hunting, and Chris is like, "You should listen to these podcasts. It's like survival, like it's basically the men's version of Dateline." But the most recent one that came out was this guy who got kidnapped in Haiti, and it's just lawlessness and the gang mentality, and they have no government there. They have no functioning operating government there, and it's just anarchy.
Wow. Pastor Joel put some numbers in front of us about all 31% of America's income goes to taxes, 3.5 trillion in federal taxes, 1.5 trillion in local and state taxes. That's the equivalent of 113 days out of the year for me and you or whoever's working to pay their taxes. And so Michael's shaking his head, getting this frustration. But we'll see that Paul says, pay your taxes. And I think he does a good job of kind of resetting, like what not just our context in Romans, but what's the context in Rome?
No, I thought that was good because, make no mistake, Paul was under no illusion. He wasn't wearing like rose-colored glasses and thinking, "Oh, the Roman government." Like, this is the guy that got 39 stripes in what was that Philippi, even though he was a citizen. And so Paul has definitely suffered under the hands of bad government. But Paul is going to say, you need to obey it. So this is a quote from Life Change Study. It says 55 AD before. This was written in 55 AD before official Roman persecution.
Gotcha.
But there was provincial, territorial persecution. We see the big Roman persecution coming in 64 with Nero. Now here's the quote from Life Change. It says, "When we read 13:1-7, we should not imagine that Paul was idealistic about his governing authorities. The book of Acts show that he was well acquainted with both the best and the worst of civil government, and also that he preached what he preached in 13:1-7. Paul had been imprisoned, given lashes 5 times by Jewish authorities, and beaten 3 times by Romans." And he gives the references there. So Paul has seen his fair share of mistreatment, and he's still going to say, you need to be subject to your government.
Yeah, it's not like this billionaire being like, "Hey, pay your taxes," and you see their tax returns like, "Oh, they don't pay taxes."
Right.
So it's easy for them. It's like, he understands that things aren't perfect. He literally has experienced the hard side of it. So with that, I will read Romans 13:1-7. Paul writes, "Every person is to be in subjection to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Therefore, whoever resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For it is a minister of God to you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing. For it is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil. Therefore, it is necessary to be in subjection, not only because of wrath, but also for conscience's sake. For because of this, you also pay taxes, for rulers are servants of God, devoting themselves to this very thing. Render to all what is due them. Tax to whom tax is due. Custom to whom custom. Fear to whom fear. Honor to whom honor."
Sounds like Paul had read some of the Gospels there.
Was he familiar, you think? Yeah. It's like, oh man, these are hitting the same beats, the same kind of a cadence kind of.
Render to all of them what is, tax to whom tax is due, custom, we'll see that again in Jesus. All right, so this passage really falls down into 3 major parts. We see a part where Paul gives us a command, and that is really just to be in subjection to our governing authorities. And then caution, where we see, when we're should be fearful of our government only if we're doing wrong. Like, we recognize that basically if you live a good life, you should not have fear of your government. And then at the end, he has this contribution. So hey, pay your taxes, honor. Those 3 things. So let's get into those 3 sections.
Great. We'll start with verse 3 under the command, that first C. Every person is to be in subjection to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Pastor Joel's breaking it down for us, but he also was like, not a lot to break down. I mean, most of us can understand this, that, we're to be in subjection to governing authorities, right?
Yeah, it's like, we can try to talk ourselves out of it, but basically, hey guys, you're supposed to be in subjection. And this is a common theme throughout our scripture. Peter, we could go to several places. First Peter says, "For the Lord's sake, submit to all human authority, whether the king as the head of state or the officials he has appointed. For the king has sent them to punish those who do wrong and to honor those who do right. It is God's will that your honorable life should silence those ignorant people who make foolish accusations against you." So Peter's not under any, he's not wearing rose glasses either. He realizes there's ignorant people out there.
Yeah.
But live your life well and being subject to them, honor them. For you are free, yet you are God's slave. So don't use your freedom as an excuse to do evil. Respect everyone and love the family of believers. Fear God and respect the king.
Man, that is good. And Peter says it well. It's like you pick up on all of these New Testament writers and their view. They weren't just like upheaving government for like no reason. You see, even know Jesus' trial and stuff. It wasn't like he was making trouble. It's like it's just a very certain way he handled his business. Barclay, the commentator, is going to say, Paul saw in the state an instrument in the hand of God, preserving the world from chaos. Those who administered the state were playing their part in that great task. Whether they knew it or not, they were doing God's work. It was the duty of all Christians to help and not to hinder. I like that whether they know it or not, man, they're established by God and they're carrying out in some capacity order, which, God is a God of order. He keeps things kind of in line.
Yeah, and we kind of already talked about this, but this is where Joel makes the point that, a bad government, even like you said, even like Barclay, even if they don't know it, they are still helping to carry out God's will, and it's better than no government at all.
Wow, so that takes over, that is the first C, command. With that, we will go to this caution in verse 2. Therefore, who resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they who have opposed will receive condemnation upon themselves. Not happy words for those that are looking to cause trouble. It's, opposing an ordinance of God, resisting authority is just that, and they will have condemnation. Verse 3 is very helpful in kind of figuring out, what does that condemnation look like? It's a good question to ask.
Yeah.
For rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil. Do you want to have no fear of authority? Do what is good, and you will have praise from the same. For it's a minister of God to you for good. But if you do what is evil, be afraid, for it does not bear the sword for nothing. For it's a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath on the one who practices evil.
Yeah.
A minister of God, the government? Don't say it ain't so, Michael.
Right. That's right. And so here we get this word fear again. And Joel asked about, if you've ever been speeding and you see the blue lights, you fear, or if you've ever, failed to yield the right of way, you know what I'm saying? And you get pulled over, that causes
too
fear,
close
right?
to home. Yeah, I don't think I speed a lot, but I definitely do speed. And it happens like, I don't do speed, but you...
No, I'm saying every time I'm driving past you,
I'm like,
I feel like I speed. And I'm like, oh, there goes Zach. So
yeah, maybe. In my mind, I'm going with the flow of traffic, but it seems maybe I'm leaving the flow line. But when I do see those blue lights, Leanne can attest. Leanne's like, you're so scared. I was like, oh, no. And then she's like, why don't speed in the first place? I don't even know I'm necessarily speeding. I feel like it's a healthy, you're going 10 over. That's like acceptable. Right. That's like the baseline. So maybe you go like 12 or 13, and that's like normal.
I do about 5 over.
Okay.
And then I always think, and then if I see a cop, I'm like getting right on. But the only times I've gotten pulled over have been bogus. They've been not my fault. Literally when I was young, I was late for. I was running late for an orchestra practice. I had to travel from Bald Knob to Jonesboro. So I was pushing it there, trying to make it up time. And then I was late to pick up Jill for a graduation. Not our graduation, but a graduation we're attending. Those were kind of on me. The other 2 tickets I've gotten in my life, and those both went away because of defensive driving and stuff like that. So those will not show up on my official record. But the 2 tickets as an adult that do show up on my record is one was in Alabama, and I was probably doing 73.
Man. And it was 70 or 65?
It was in a construction zone. No construction going on. Like there were barrels, but they're like all the way to the side of the road. And like, this is a construction zone. This is like, you're doing 15 miles over. And I was like, this is just a speed trap.
Man.
And then the other one was out like by Ashley Ridge, where the school where it opens up the 4 lanes, but then the speed goes down. And I didn't realize the speed went down. So
that's not right. That is a grievous evil.
Right. So
man, that is killer. But we all, I think most of us can probably relate to that. Pastor Joel made the point that, what's probably intended here is that the state holds the death penalty. They have the capacity to do that. That's part of, guarding and keeping some of this order. And, that's what's at risk if you're out there causing trouble. That they're, I love that, a minister of God. That's pretty strong language, carrying out God's work.
Yeah. And as you alluded to at the opening, this harkens back to never paying back evil for evil, but respect what is right in the sight of all men, if possible. So as far as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. Never take your own revenge, beloved, but leave room for the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. Well, sometimes the Lord repays through the government.
Yeah, that's a means.
They are
that's
his
right.
minister
that's
of
right.
meting out that wrath.
Man, that connection is so good. If we were to continue on, verse 5 says, therefore, it's necessary to be in subjection, not only because of wrath. And so you see that it's a necessity, but not just because of the wrath. Then we got this quote from John Stott. He says, the statement that rulers commend those who do right and punish those who do wrong is not, of course, invariably true, as Paul perfectly knew, although he had himself experienced from procurators and centurions the benefits of Roman justice. He also knew about the miscarriage of justice and condemnation of Jesus. And if all provincial courts were just, he would not have needed to appeal to Caesar. So in depicting rulers in such a good light as commending the right and opposing the wrong, he is stating the divine ideal, not the human reality. And it would behoove us to finish out that verse, I suppose, not only because of wrath, but also for conscience's sake, that, there is this condemnation on the government side. But if it's not right to do, we shouldn't be doing it anyway.
No, that's good. So is it ever okay to practice civil disobedience?
You gotta do whatever the government says. No, I think I love that our Bible is filled with examples.
Right.
And I think the examples are really good because, again, they're not just like rabble rousers trying to, it's like they are pushing back, but these are such good examples. Like, man, this is a great template.
Yeah. And then the question that always comes out of this, and I've had this when I was young, and then I've answered it with my kids as well. What about the American Revolution?
I think that's a tough one.
Yeah. And what I struggled with it because you think was, not, taxing tea, taxing sugar, taxing stamps without representation. Is that right? No. Does it rise to the level of, we should overthrow the government? Maybe, I don't know. But I was studying some person, and they made this observation that the people, our founding fathers, while some of them may not have held a office back then, most of them were in the government for their colonies. So it wasn't like they had been put in place. So it wasn't like an individual in their own capacity rebelling against their government. It was an elected official saying, from government post to government post, you're not honoring your word. You've broken it several times, and we're going to call a clean break. And that helped me, I guess, rationalize it more, because it's not just Joe Blow standing up. It's like these are elected officials.
Yeah, no, that I've never considered that, because I think that is a tough one, and I think God's done a lot of very, very good things out of it. Not saying that everything in there was right, but that's a great one. I wish that one was in our Bible. I wish in Daniel there's a prophecy of America and the Civil War, and we could have got an answer there. Unfortunately, Daniel only gives us a couple of examples, not Civil War related. Daniel 3:16 through 18 talks about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king. It goes, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to give you an answer concerning this matter. If it be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire. And he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But even if he doesn't, let it be known to you, O king, that we are not going to serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. That they took a stand, and they were pretty brazen. They're like, we're not going to bow to the statue. We can't do it. I think they were, matter of fact, I don't think they were getting they weren't like canvas. I don't know if they were like, let's overthrow the government. They were like, hey, we're just not going to participate. Yeah.
They probably didn't have any mean slogans about Nebuchadnezzar or wear hats or stuff like that. But all right. thinking of, I think people, it's tough when we have the freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And our supreme law of the land is our Constitution.
Yep. Yeah.
I think sometimes we take it too far.
Yeah. I can agree with that.
So we had Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in Daniel. We had Daniel at the beginning when he's given the food, and they're like, this is not kosher. I don't think he used that word. But he's like, we can't, this isn't. So then they worked out something. And then in Daniel 6, when the laws passed where you can't pray, he's disobeying then.
And Pastor made the point, like, man, maybe even opening up his windows to like send a message in like a small way, like showing his act versus, maybe not just like, he's not like opening everyone else's windows, like, look at me, but he's like being open about it. We look at the book of Acts, some New Testament writing that they didn't stop either. Acts 4 says, and when they had summoned them, they commanded them not to speak or teach at all in the name of Jesus. But Peter and John answered and said to them, whether it's right in the sight of God to give heed to you rather than to God, you be the judge. For we can't stop speaking about what we have seen and heard. Again, just kind of told them, sorry, but not sorry.
Right.
Got to say this. And they acted in opposition of the government.
That's good. And like I alluded to, I am a civil servant. I work for our government. So I was enlisted for a short time in the Navy and under a program, and then I was an officer. And so in all three of those places, I took oaths to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Wow.
And our president takes that oath. Any official of the government takes that oath. And so for our government, on a horizontal view, our highest law of the land is our Constitution, and so we are empowered in our government
right.
to take a stand, to speak up. We have our First Amendment says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble, and to petition the government for redress of grievances. So a lot of stuff there. YouTube will occasionally get me on this, serve me up a bunch of these guys, these First Amendment auditors. Have you seen any of these?
Oh, no. Yeah, tell me more.
So there's people that will go to places and they'll exercise these things.
Okay.
And they're most of them are pretty good to stay within the law, and police will come up to them. And I have a lot of respect for most of our police, but there's but some of them are clearly, and they're like, hey, this is what I'm doing right now is free speech. It is constitutionally protected activity.
Oh yeah, I've seen some of these, maybe not as much as those. And I always wonder, like, I've seen a lot of people like getting pulled over and having a firearm in the car, and I never know if they're just, it's like clickbait, and they're like hoping to get pulled over so they can like or it's like a teaching moment or whatever. And I think some of that is good because they know their rights, which are great. That's good.
So these guys will often film. He's like freedom of the press. He's like, let me see your press badge. And he's like, the Constitution does not require a press badge. Like there's no so stuff like that. So it's all good. We saw sometimes justice is miscarried. This guy, Jack Phillips, was asked to make a cake for a same-sex wedding, and he refused, got sued. I think the state of Colorado came down on him really aggressively, appealed all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court sided with him. It's like, yeah, you can't make him, like, basically you're making him say something that he doesn't want to say. And
it's that kind of stuff gives you hope when things do go up to the Supreme Court. Not that I've agreed with every Supreme Court decision, but when you read some of their decision, it seems to be much more objective than a lot of the lower stuff. Even if it you're like, okay, you're not totally objective there, but it seems like they, for the most part, they're citing. It seems more than just like what happened in Colorado.
Right. Yep. All right. So next big section. So we talked about let me scroll back up here, the command to be in subject to our government, and then the caution that, hey, there is some fear. You do need to, act well because the government is going to be good for for those who are good, and they're going to bring about fear for those who are evil. And then the last section is our contribution. And I'll read this, verse 6. It says, "For because of this, you also pay taxes. For rulers are servants of God, devoting themselves to this very thing. Render to all what is due them, tax to whom tax is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor is due." And Joe made a good point about, if you disagree with a leader, fine, but word it in a way that still is showing that leader the custom or the honor that they're doing. Now, sometimes you get, what happens, I think people get so disgusted with people, like, they're not doing the honor. Like, they're not doing any custom, so.
Yeah, I think Pastor Joel nailed the ideal. I think, a lot of times we don't talk in this, but I think there's good things to keep in mind. We mentioned this, Jesus' words, they're trying to trick them, and he basically says, then render to Caesar things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. And it's like, man, great answer in the midst of trying to get caught in a trap. And so the conclusion, a lot of practical things Pastor Joel mentioned along the way, but really, think about how can you be a good citizen? What's that look like? Submit to authority whenever you can, to the government when it aligns with the Bible. Give honor, pay your taxes, pray, then engage in the government. And Pastor Joel was transparent. I think he said, if I could do something different, I would be more involved, at some capacity in local politics. I'd probably say the same thing. It's almost like, man, it's like so terrible out there. I distance myself. It's like, man, I'm running for governor. I'm putting my name in, Michael. Vote for Hale. It's like, it's so easy to be apathetic and just complain. I mean, voting is good. All
it would be
these
cool
things.
if you had a running mate whose last name was Heaven. It could be like Heaven and Hale. Right?
That would be great. No, I always thought, this is a total aside.
Or your slogan could be, "Get heaven with Hale."
There's so many good things. I love it. Yeah, so but I think those are good. How can you get involved in local matters? It's good way to be a good citizen.
I like Joel pointed out that he pays his taxes, but the least that he can. So every legal means that you have to reduce your tax burden, legal. Take it. That's
what they're there for. They're trying to incentivize you, like you said earlier. Yeah,
right. I remember Trump was debating Hillary back in 2015, 2016, whenever it was, and she was like, he uses all of these loopholes. He's like, yeah, they're written in the law, and so do all your donors. And if and he was like, it'd be real easy for the Senate and the Congress to pass a law to close that loophole, but you're not, because all your donors take part of that loophole.
It's very true. If it's legal, hey, that's we're okay with that. So do your taxes. You got to be like Michael and get an earlier start. Don't wait till April 15th.
Yeah, don't. Yeah, that's good.
That's all I have. You got anything to add?
I know. That's all I got.
Awesome. That's our take. Thanks for listening to Take Two. Find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube for those who want to watch our videocast.